guys. Sorry, my camera's all crazy. I'm trying to get it straight. Okay. I wanted to get on here tonight and talk to you about our adoption journey. And I might have to do this in two parts because I'm probably going to get super long-winded on this, because it was 21 months from start to finish, so almost 2 years. And talk about a roller coaster. There's so much red tape. There's so many emotions. It's just crazy. So in 2014, we stepped out and started our adoption journey. We knew almost right off the bat that God wanted us to adopt internationally. Not everyone agreed with us. Not everyone was on board. Some people didn't say it to us. Some people did. They were very vocal about not wanting us to do that. And I'm not going to blast anybody again. That's not what these videos are about. But some very close family members did not want us to do this. And it's funny now, because now that Connor's home, those family members are the ones who love him the most, and they seem to be the family members that he's closest to, which is just so crazy. But so we set out on our adoption journey in April 2014. We prayed about an agency and who we wanted to go with, and Bethany Christian Services is who we ended up going with. And I'll talk about them all throughout this, but I will say that they helped us tremendously. They walked us through the steps. They helped us so much. But as far as the paperwork and all those things and decision making and all that, you're totally on your own on that. That's up to you. And I hope everyone goes into adoption praying and seeking God's will and God's decisions, just in their decision making, seeking what God would have them to do, and letting Him lead them. But that's definitely how we did it, for sure. And so we went with Bethany Christian Services. We started out, we didn't know which country. We didn't qualify for a whole lot of countries, because at the time I was too young to qualify for, like, China. China, you have to be 30. Jeremy was fixing to turn 30, but still, since I wasn't 30, we didn't qualify. But we did qualify for Hong Kong, which I know is in China, so that's a little bit confusing. They have their own separate government, so they're looked at as separate. It's crazy. But anyway, a lot of people have asked that. Yes, Hong Kong is in China, but it's different. So we qualified for Ethiopia, I believe, Uganda, Hong Kong, South Africa, and Albania, I think. And so first we just started out praying and seeking God's will in which country. In the meantime, we could go ahead and start our home study and all the stuff we had to do for that, and we didn't have to make a decision on country until close to the end of our home study. So we were able to go ahead and start, even though we weren't sure yet exactly what we were doing, to tell you the truth. It was super scary. A lot of people think we just jumped in and we were so brave and we were so awesome and it's great what you're doing, but we were terrified. We were scared to death. We were excited. We were elated. I remember feeling so elated, and it felt like it shouldn't have felt this way at all, because it should have been a weight on my shoulders, but it felt like a weight off my shoulders to know that finally, after 7 years, I was going to get the baby I'd been praying for, that I'd been begging for. And I felt a lot of relief. And I know that's crazy, and it's crazy for me to even say, but I did. I felt really relieved, and I put all my time and energy and everything into the adoption. I eat, slept, dreamed, breathed, everything was adoption. I was constantly doing paperwork. I was always doing something with the adoption. And so I just wanted my baby home really bad. So the faster I did it, the faster I would get my baby home. I knew that. And so we're praying about, we were praying between those countries, because those were the only ones we qualified for. Again, all countries have their own separate rules and regulations, and So those were the only ones we were in the qualifying for. And so we were praying and praying, and we both felt drawn to Hong Kong. Right out the gate, pretty much. We prayed for a really long time, and we just knew he was there, because it became very clear to us that God was going to lead us to our baby. It wasn't about, we're just going to adopt a baby. We'll find a baby that needs a home and we'll adopt it. It was about finding our child. God drove that very, very clear, made that super clear to us from the get-go. And so after we prayed and prayed, both felt drawn to Hong Kong. Then we started praying about Hong Kong, and we still felt every way we turned that God was leading us to adopt from Hong Kong. So we let our agency know, and I'm sure she had let us know before. Sometimes, you know, they always say you can take the first step without seeing the whole staircase. I think God calls us to do that a lot. I think he doesn't show us the whole entire picture because we're not ready for it. I think a lot of times it would scare us further, it would blow our minds, and it might even stop us, you know. And so I'm sure that they had made it clear to us, because again, they were really good, they were phenomenal. But when we let our agency, well, our social worker know that we wanted to go with Hong Kong, she said, okay, you are aware that that is a special needs only program, meaning all the children have some form of special needs, be it moderate or severe. And we were like, whoa. and I'm going to be really honest here. No was the answer. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. Nope. I must have heard God wrong. No. But again, we had prayed for so long, and we had felt drawn to Hong Kong for so long, and we'd been praying about Hong Kong. We honestly knew that was what God was calling us to do. And have you ever felt God calling you to do something, but you're like, I must have heard him wrong, because there's no way I can do that? And I think that that's why God didn't show us that from the get-go, because had we, and I'm sure, like I said, that they told us that, but had we known, hey, we qualify for these countries and Hong Kong, but Hong Kong special needs, we would have put that out to begin with. And I'm not saying that God couldn't have spoke to us and made it super, super clear, but I'm saying sometimes we let ourselves and our emotions and our thought process get in the way of his plan. And so I really think that was a situation where God did not show us the whole staircase. And so we knew, though, you can't totally feel on board and then find out one little detail and be like, well, I must have heard God wrong, never mind. We knew Hong Kong, but we did not want to believe that. We were scared. We didn't feel ready for that. We were scared to death about having a child, period, because we had no idea what we were doing. And then you're telling us our child's going to have special needs, and we're like, not ready for that, not doing that. So what you had to do during the home study process, if you chose Hong Kong, was you had to fill out paperwork on what needs you were open to. And I guess I just said that all wrong, because you had to do that regardless of country. They gave out a list, and you had to say yes or no or maybe to a list. I mean, a crazy long list of things. There was stuff as simple as having an extra finger or having one less finger, to you know, missing an arm, missing a leg, to facial deformities, to cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, HIV. There was just, the list went on. And so we chose not to fill that out till the end, the very last. We asked if we could do everything else with our home study and do that very, very last. And she's like, yeah, absolutely, because we're like, we really want to pray about it. And so we prayed about it, and at the end of our home study, which our home study was supposed to take 2 to 4 months, ours ended up taking like 6. And the reason it took so long was there was some changes within the agency, and basically, well, I don't even want to go into that because I don't want to dog out anybody, but I'll just say that it took longer than it should have. And it's okay, because now, again, there's things in life and you can just find God's handprints on it. And I know God's handprints were on that, and there was a reason it took that long. There was a reason, and it's okay. We're not even gonna sit and worry about it, you know. And so we're just believing that that was part of God's plan. And so we filled out the paperwork at the very end. Our social worker finally told us one day, I've done everything I can do. I need you to do this paperwork. And so we did. There was a lot of no's on that paperwork. It was out of fear. Now, I will say that we put a lot of yeses that had we did that paperwork at the beginning, we wouldn't have put yeses by. We had grown. And at the time, also, I started a new job. And I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities. And so I was learning a lot. My heart was softening. And again, I think God placed me at that job because He knew Hong Kong is the country, you know, and they're going to have a child with special needs, and I'm going to place her there so she will grow and so she will become ready to be the mother that she needs to be, because I know without a doubt that I would not be the mother I was supposed to be to Connor. I would not be the mother that Connor needs had I not got that job, and had I not grew and been taught and just refined at that job. And so we turned in our paperwork, and at that point we started working on our DOSR, which is paperwork that goes specifically to Hong Kong. It goes specifically to your country. So a lot of times they want you, by the end of that, for sure, a lot of times during that, to identify a child. You can wait on a referral, and a referral is when they match you with a baby. They look over all your paperwork and then match you with a baby, but that takes a lot longer. I'm not saying every country. Here again, when I talk about specifics, I'm talking specifically to Hong Kong. And so we had a social worker that was with Bethany, that was of course here, and then we were dealing with a social worker that was in Hong Kong, and they let us know that it would be a significantly longer wait if we waited on a referral. They like for you to choose off a waiting list, and once our homestay was approved, we could look at the waiting list, and there was so many children on there, and there was not very many from Hong Kong. They don't put a whole lot of their kids on there. There was a lot of babies from China. Of course, we didn't qualify for China, so it was kind of frustrating to see these pop up and see these beautiful little faces, and we're like, oh my gosh, you know, and then find out, oh, well, they're from China. And again, we could not adopt from China. They would not let us because of our ages. And so I remember finding this baby on there named Knox. And he was from Hong Kong, and he was this beautiful little baby. I think he was 2. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details about him because that's not right. I don't feel it's my info to share now because he has a family, but I will say that we thought, this is it. This is our son. He was a beautiful, beautiful baby. And he had some brain abnormalities. I can't even say that right. But anyway, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go real in depth. But he had, you know, some special needs. And I knew, I can't think of any of it now, but I knew his birthday. I knew how he was born. I knew a lot of the details about his family. I knew there were so many things I knew. And again, on the waiting list, you get some info about their diagnosis and stuff, but you don't get like a lot of family info until you inquire deeper about them. And so we found out that they were going to let us proceed forward. It was between us and another family, and they ask you, the adoption unit from Hong Kong ask you a ton of questions, and it is hard questions. It is a lot of what if scenarios. It is difficult. It's grueling. It really is. And this went on for weeks, probably about 6 weeks, I think. And meanwhile, you're trying not to, but we were getting super attached to this baby. And I know that sounds crazy to get attached to a photo. So really, we're getting attached to the ideal of this child, this specific child. And I remember getting an email from our social worker letting us know that the other family was chosen for this child. They did not pick us. They picked another family. And we were completely crushed. We were absolutely devastated. I can remember locking myself in the bathroom at work one day and just having a ugly face, snot everywhere cry fest. I can remember having to pull over one day driving to work because I got so upset. But we knew we had to keep moving forward. We knew our child is out there and he's waiting for us, and he's alone and he don't have a family and he needs us. And so you had to keep going. You had to keep putting one foot in front of the other, just like I talk about in my infertility video. It was super difficult, and that was a hard blow to our adoption journey because we're cruising along. We're super excited. God's about to do a good work in us. We are pumped. He is going to use us to parent an orphan, and we're so excited and we're so blessed, and we're about to get our baby. And then it just seems like blow after blow after blow you're hit with. And so we pressed forward, and we decided then, because, you know, it had been between us and another family, and in a lot of ways we felt like we were fighting for this baby. And it's all good when you think you're on the winning side, but when you didn't win, it opens your eyes to a lot of things. And we decided then that that is not what we wanted to do. We wanted to pursue a child that no one was pursuing. We wanted the child that had nobody fighting for them. We wanted the child who was looked over, basically. We decided then that was our goal then. We would not pursue another child that another family was pursuing. We decided that, and we prayed about that, and we felt like that was the route we were supposed to go. So that is what we did. And so again, I looked at the waiting list multiple times a day, like they're going to add something on, you know, and because there's a 13-hour difference between us and Hong Kong. So I mean, if I'm looking at it during the day, it's not there. I know nothing's been put, you know what I mean? But I looked at it all the time. And there was, no matter what, every time I looked at it, there was this baby on there named Thaddeus. And we looked at his picture, and I remember one day they had new pictures put up of him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Jeremy, look at Thaddeus. They put up new pictures, and he was, you could tell in the pictures, he was being super goofy and just being silly, and I'm like, look at him, and we would laugh, and we would look at his pictures, and but we knew he was not our baby because he had Down syndrome, and we had already filled out the paperwork. We were not open to Down syndrome. We didn't feel we could handle it. We felt very inadequate, and we just did not, we had shut our hearts off to that. That was a no. And so we would look at Thaddeus. We would see pictures of Thaddeus. We thought he was adorable. We thought, man, he's a little ham. Look at him. In his pictures, you could just tell. He was a firecracker, and but he could not be our baby because he had Down syndrome. So we just kept on praying. In the meanwhile, we're still doing our paperwork. We're still working hard. We're still getting all this stuff together. And so one day, our agency sent us a child study, and a child study is all their info. It has stuff about their family, it has everything they know about them is in a child study. And once you're approved to adopt, you're allowed to look at them. And so she sent us a child study. What it was sometimes your agency will get info about a child that's just been added to the list to be adopted, and so we saw it, like other families could see it, but we were seeing it before he was added to the waiting list. Basically, they'll send it to the agencies and let them send it out to families. So we're looking at this. She said, I've sent you one for you to look over. He just got added, blah, blah, blah. So we look at this baby, and as soon as I open it, I'm like, oh, he's beautiful. But why did she send this to us? Because he has Down syndrome. And we read about him. We looked at him. He was a year old. And he was beautiful, y'all. He was so beautiful. And we're like, why would she send us this? But you know what? We're like, we're going to pray about it. And so I messaged her back and I said, and she said, I know he had Down syndrome, but they just added him. I like to let all families wait and know, you know, before they add him to the whole list. And I just felt like I was supposed to send this to you, even though I know you're not open to Down syndrome. And I'm like, okay, we'll pray about it, you know, and we will let you know a decision if we decide to move forward. And she's like, okay. And then she said, I think since she saw we were open to praying about it, she was gonna send us. She said, I'm gonna send you another child study. This child has been waiting a very long time, and they are just so hopeful that before the new year, he'll have a family pursuing him. And they don't know why no one has seemed interested or come forward to adopt him. It's puzzling. He's a wonderful child. He's very loved. He's very sweet. He's very loving. But so I feel like I should send it to you. Is it okay if I send it to you? So at this point, I'm going to be brutally honest. Me and Jeremy were super annoyed. Why? She sent us this one child with Down syndrome. Why is she going to send us another child study of a child with Down syndrome when she knows we're not open to it? We're wasting our time. We should be looking for our child. And, but we said, okay. Because we're like, well, what's it going to hurt? Jeremy finally said, I'm super annoyed, but what's it going to hurt to look at it? Let's look at him. So I'm like, okay. So I told her, you can send it. We'll look, you know. And, when I opened that child study, this is going to make me cry, I'm sorry. When I opened that child study, this familiar face popped up. And I think at that moment we both knew. And it was Thaddeus. And I said, oh my gosh, Jeremy, it's Thaddeus. And we looked at him, and, you know, we had seen him before. We Googled over him on the waiting list, and it's at that point that I think we really both were like, wow, this is crazy. Like, you know, what are the odds that we've talked about him, we've looked at him, and she would send this to us? Like, wow. But again, we were fearful. I was fearful, don't get me wrong. I feel like I was more comfortable with the idea of having a child with Down syndrome because I worked with adults with Down syndrome. So, not that I had experience. It's not like being their parent, but and plus I was working with adults. I had no experience with babies or teenagers, you know. But I felt like my heart had been softened, and I was coming around to the idea. So I told Jeremy, one of these boys is our son. I feel that. And I didn't add this in, but let me say that not long into the journey, I felt like God kept saying, you're going to have a son, I'm going to give you a son. Because we were open to boy or girl. And at that time, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm supposed to have a son. Like, I felt like God was saying it. It felt completely right. And so we chose to specify that we did want a male at that point. I wanted to add that in. So I told Jeremy, I think one of these boys is our son, and he was like, what? No, you know, they have Down syndrome. We're not ready for that. I remember so many times him telling me, Stephanie, we're not ready for that. Like, no, we're not ready for that. And so I was starting to fall for these boys. I thought they were beautiful. And so I'm like, man, I was getting super annoyed with Jeremy. I'm going to be honest here. And I would leave him notes around the house. I can't think of where the scripture is right now, but the verse about God not giving us the spirit of fear. I would leave that verse for him around the house. And we were getting frustrated and annoyed with each other, very agitated. And I remember praying one day and God saying to me, you have to let me deal with him. What you're doing is not helping. And I am trying to work on his heart, and I'm trying to speak to him, but you are messing it up by these little notes and you are messing it up. And it made me think, how many times are we messing up what God's trying to do because we're out doing the wrong things? So I got quiet. I quit. I said, okay, Lord, but I'm telling you, you've got your work cut out for you because he is not having it. And so I prayed and I prayed, obviously, you know, for these two boys. I know one of them's my son. And finally, this went on overtime. And again, we're working on paperwork at this time. We weren't stopped or stalling. We're still working. And finally, one day, I felt like God said, "It's Thaddeus. I've had you looking at him. I've had him popping up, you know, the new pictures on the waiting list, and it got you all interested, and you were looking at him again, and you were showing Jeremy, and then for me to have a social worker send his study to you for you to find out more about him, it's Thaddeus. It's him." And so another thing about Thaddeus is, you know, this other little boy, his child study was just being sent out, and he was young. You know, the younger, I'm just going to be honest, the younger they are, the more likely someone wants to adopt them, because people want babies. People want young children. It's sad. It really is for the older children, but it's just how it is. And so I felt like God said to me, "Don't you remember what we talked about? We talked about you pursuing the child that was not being pursued. We talked about you finding the child that had been looked over, that had been left to the wayside, in a sense, that no one was pursuing, that people were just picking over and moving right along." And this one little boy, I'm trying really hard not to say his name. I'm afraid I'm about to slip. But this one little boy is not even been sent out yet. Look at him, this 1-year-old boy. He's going to be scooped up. But she told you that this other child's been waiting for 2 years with no one. He's been on that waiting list for 2 whole years with no one looking at him, with no one asking about him, with no one. And so I was like, wow, he's right. It's Thaddeus. It's him. And I think that's my son. But again, Jeremy was not on board. So, I mean, I don't know, Lord. I mean, what about Jeremy? And then we, obviously I'm skipping over here because I'm already being really long-winded, but lots of other things happened, and finally Jeremy was like, "You know what? It's him." Like, I'm scared to death. And men don't want to admit they're scared. I feel like women don't really either, but we're kind of more open with our emotions. But he was scared to death, honestly, and so was I. But I felt like I had the upper hand in that situation just because I worked with adults with Down syndrome. Now, that could make it easier on me, or that could make it harder on me, depending, but it made it easier. I fell in love with these guys and girls that I was working with. And so we let them know in January, on January 11th, we let them know we want to pursue Thaddeus. We think he's our son. We want to pursue Thaddeus. And I remember the agency worker answering immediately and was like, wow, I just got chills. Like, I'm freaking out right now. I'm so excited. I'm going to let them know. So she let them know, and they came back immediately. The next day, because there's a 12-hour time difference, so coming back immediately isn't like, or immediately, like, ding, I'm automatically getting another email. I mean, it took like the next day, but that's still immediately. And they said, "We are pleased to let you know that Thaddeus is on hold for your family." And I'm like, what does that mean? Is he mine? What do I do? What does that mean? And so they said, what that means is he is, no one internationally can adopt him. We're pulling him from the waiting list. No one can see him anymore. But if a family comes that lives in Hong Kong and wants to adopt him, they will be able to adopt him. And so that scared me, because I'm getting super attached to this boy, and what if someone scoops up and gets him and it happens to us again after it's already happened? But our agency worker said something that made a lot of sense. She said, "Guys, it's been 2 years, and no one from in that country has came forward. It would be very unlikely for them to come forward now." And she said, "I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I can't tell you that. But rest assured that God has a plan here, and I think you are his family." And So, yeah, we had to answer lots of questions. We had 23 weeks to wait to find out if they're going to let us adopt him. And during that time, they're asking us tough questions. They're rewording questions and asking us over again, even though we've already answered, and we're trying to find ways to kind of redo our answer, but yet say that was our answer, so, and say the same thing. And it was some of the hardest things I've ever been through. It was difficult. It was a long 23 weeks. And the whole while, you're like, God, is this our baby? Is this him? And so I'm one of them people that prays for a sign, and I know that's not the right thing half the time, and I know God's probably super annoyed with me half the time, but I kept praying God, and I'm like, God, I know we need to wait on an official answer, but I'm asking you, is this our baby? Like, just send me a sign. Send me a sign that I can't overthink or deny and think, was that really a sign? Was that a sign? You know, send me a sign. Please, Lord, send me a sign. And he did. I got to looking at Thaddeus's info, and Thaddeus's info we had looked over 1,000,000 times. We had looked, and I had read, and I had studied, and it was just like that first baby. I knew about the day he was born. I knew about how much he weighed. I knew his measurements. I knew how tall his daddy is. I knew how much his mom weighed. I knew all this stuff about him. I had studied it. I knew it backwards and forwards, but I had missed something. And when I asked for a sign, God helped me find it. So I sit down one night, and I pulled out his child study, and I was reading more about him. And I pulled up this page about his mother surrendering her rights. And his mother relinquished her rights on February 18th. And when I read that, I knew immediately that was my sign. There was a reason I didn't see it before. There was a reason God revealed it to me, because God knows what's about to happen. He knows the future. He knows the present. He knows it all. He knew I was going to ask for a sign. So he made it where I had read that paperwork a bazillion times. I had never saw this one line, because he knew he was going to use that one line later. And if you do not know, February 18th is my birthday. And what a gift I was given, because my son's birth mother relinquished her rights on my birthday. And I had no idea about him. I had no idea I was supposed to adopt. I was over here probably being selfish and bitter and mad at God, praying for a baby, asking God why I wasn't pregnant yet, telling God that I was really mad at him, and I didn't understand what he was doing, and I didn't understand why he didn't love me, because he wouldn't give me the desire of my heart. And here he is, oceans away, having this mother make this heartbreaking decision, because this is my baby. And he's sitting here thinking, you have no idea. You're calling me selfish and bitter, and you think I don't love you, but I'm moving mountains for you over here. I'm doing a mighty work over here, and you don't have a clue. And I wonder how many times that is what's going on. God is trying to do a work, but he is working out all the little fine details, but we want it now, now, now. We're not willing to wait. We don't want to wait. And so that was a super powerful moment for me when I realized that. And that's when I knew, even though the adoption unit hadn't said, yes, you can adopt him yet, yes, he's your son, I knew he was my son. He was my baby. From then on, he was mine. I carried his picture in my car. I carried his picture in my purse. I carried his picture in my Bible. We were showing people his picture. We were having people pray over him. And I just knew it was him. And after 23 weeks, they came forward, and I remember where I was. I remember where I was, what chair I was sitting in. I remember the first person I turned to and told. I remember the moment it felt like time froze when I got that email and it said, congratulations, you have a son. And from that point on, he is your baby. He is yours. But what you have to do is you have to then start doing paperwork specifically for him. And in as little as it was supposed to be 4 to 6 months, you could be going to get him. And it was incredible. It was just this peace flooding over me. This is our baby. And yeah, Down syndrome was still scary, but it was just, we were too happy to even worry about it. We were ecstatic. We were over the moon, overjoyed for this baby. We were so excited. And so we were working on our paperwork, and we were hurrying up and we had to get in 30 training hours a piece. We were getting in our training hours, and we were doing all this stuff, and we were, at that time, they really want your training hours to be specific to your child's needs. So we were reading all the Down syndrome books. We were reading, I was joining support groups left and right. We were finding out everything we could about Down syndrome, and we worked really hard. And in 6 months, we hopped on an airplane and we went and got our baby. And we met Connor. This was another God thing. This was in no way a coincidence. He was working out these details. He was fitting that puzzle together. We met Connor. I held him in my arms on January 11th, 2016. And January 11th, 2015 was the day we let them know we wanted to pursue him. So 1 year later to the day that they said, he's on hold for your family, I held him in my arms. And it's just amazing the things God did for us, the mountains he moved for us, and the way the pieces just fit together so perfectly. And